Hello, you're watching news from Kazakhstan. I'm Askar Sheraliyev, and here are today's top stories. Penalized for provoking labor conflicts, forbid state officials to drive foreign cars. President Nursultan Nazarbayev severely criticized his subordinates at the Industrial Forum in Astana. Public activists continue protest actions in support of arrested stage director Bulat Atabayev and journalist Janbolat Mamai. They are picketing the embassy and intend to write a letter to German Chancellor Angela Merkel. The winners of Gennady Tolmachov Journalism Prize were awarded in Almaty, while in Astana talks were raised over the harm of state contracts within mass media. Prohibit, tighten, penalize. These verbs and imperative were voiced by the President Nursultan Nazarbayev on Tuesday at the Industrial Forum in Astana. The leader of the nation practically wiped out all the dashing reports of the ministers on grandiose achievements of the government. The wrath of the president was thrown at national companies, governors, and even the cabinet of ministers. More details next.
The forum was not meant for officials to relax. After commissioning several companies and congratulating everyone on the creation of a new national digital television channel 24.kz, the president switched to criticism. He touched upon labor conditions, production failures, wages arrears, and especially labor legislation compliance issues. The head of state heard rumors that in case of future pregnancy, women are often asked to write a letter of resignation in advance when applying for the job. This happens at a time when Nazarbayev actively promotes the idea of higher birth rates. The president also said that not all labor disputes are for the good of the cause. There are provocateurs and parasites who do not work anywhere but are making money on this, inciting everyone and opposing something. They come from somewhere and call the others to make some noise for a certain reward. Making noise is usually associated with rallies and strikes. However, no one knows what exactly the president meant. Officials only nodded in agreement and applauded Nazarbayev's emotional speech. The nation's leader gave orders to raise responsibility for compliance with social legislation. It concerned both local and foreign businesses operating in Kazakhstan. The outraged leader did not spare even mayors and administration heads, noting reproachfully that out of 225 industrial projects launched in 2010 and 6 months of 2011, only half is operating and just at 60% capacity. New factories are being built, indeed, the president said, but an entire year was given to them to start up. Local administrations are responsible if the enterprises remain idle, because it looks like authorities only care about commissioning factories, losing all interest afterwards. First of all, mayors and ministers should not have a simplified understanding of industrialization. Yes, we know that all those sites and factories are commissioned, but they need to comply with future requirements. Unfortunately, for some officials, it is more important to report about commissioning something, pressing the button, cutting the ribbon, and then forgetting about it. After the harsh critical attacks against the officials, the nation's leader traditionally ended the event with a joke. However, this time the president's humor did not make anyone happy. Ending his speech, Nazarbayev promised officials to create a situation similar to that of an anecdote. However, he did not specify which one. The obviously confused officials had no other choice but to respond with collective laughter.
Leaders of trade unions and human rights defenders already reacted to the statement of the president and on the responsibility for provoking labor conflicts in Kazakhstan. They are confident that trade unions will suffer from this initiative the most. Trade union members note that tightening of legislation can affect the compliance of the law by the employers and observance of collective agreements in particular. At the same time, this will initiate another wave of repressions in the country against independent trade unions.
Amendments to the law on trade unions are being discussed in Kazakhstan since the start of the year. However, talks are led by representatives of state trade unions, while independent organizations are deprived of this right. Union leaders also noted that many organizations are unable to obtain official registration, which prevents the development of labor movement and proper protection of labor rights. The situation in oil, gas, mining, and metallurgy industries, as well as numerous strikes, show that labor disputes largely remain unresolved. The trial of 37 oil strikers did not present any evidence proving that Kozlov, Ablazov, and Kitibayev provoked the conflict. In addition to the Criminal Code article on incitement of social hatred and amendments to labor laws adopted on February 17th, which actually legitimized detention in case of illegal strikes, they want to further step up punitive measures. This reaction is related to repressions meant to preserve not only the political system, but also social relations. I am absolutely against this instant introduction of such measures, because they might have very serious repercussions, and they can't be implemented at the moment. These proposals were made under pressuring circumstances. Everything suggests that the situation between staff and employers is very tense.
On Tuesday, the leader of the nation also criticized state officials for what they drive. President expressed his discontent on the fact that state officials do not use vehicles assembled in Kazakhstan. Only 3 ministries, including National Security Committee, Defense Ministry and Emergencies Ministry, were actively involved in using homemade vehicles. All of the rest have ignored the order of the leader of the nation, which was made in January.
We produce our own cars, but state officials ask for a Mercedes. They can buy them out of their own pockets if they want. Otherwise, we should forbid this immediately. The costs are totally different. Just imagine what kind of state assets are being spent. Just go and see that Kazakhstan already produces good cars. There's no need to import them. Total incivility, ignorance, and sleaze, those are the words the president used to describe officials with a penchant for expensive foreign cars. The head of state said that even in rich countries abroad, people buy just one compact car for the entire family. At the same time, leaders of national companies who themselves were quite poor just recently, at least according to Nazarbayev, would prefer riding battle tanks, if those were freely available. The national leader's wrath quite evidently shocked and impressed his subordinates. However, officials say they can't change the situation at the moment. Sawat Munbayev embarrassingly explained after the event that many use the cars they were specifically assigned. I'm using the car assigned by the operations office. It's a Mercedes, but it's not our fault. They're giving us this car, so we have to use it. We'll use another if they give it to us.
Quotes from the speeches of the leader of the nation now cost money. Taldykorgan authorities are demanding monetary compensation for allocation of billboards with excerpts from Nursultan Nazarbayev's speeches. While those who put on those billboards, the local businessmen, believe that the words of the president is the property of the country and must not be subjected to taxation. The arguments of both sides in the next report.
4 billboards quoting the president could be taken down. That's why 2 Taldykorgan businessmen, Rustam Hakimov and Yildirkhan Shoratbayev, keep an eye on them on a daily basis. Entrepreneurs are worried the billboards could disappear, just like a poster of Uralsk governor Bulat Shakimov a month ago. That was an act of solidarity of Taldykorgan residents with their neighbors from Uralsk, who were protesting against the governor's decision to take down advertising stands. In the new scandal, local officials say the president's quote is a form of advertising, thus it's subject to taxation, $134 for each billboard. We defend our rights in various ways. These quotes, first of all, are the way to convey the thoughts of our president to our people. Sometimes I get the impression that the further away the officials are from Astana, the less they want to see or feel the control of the president. Maybe these quotations will help everyone, including officials, to be more responsive to the needs of individuals and businessmen. Taldykorgan city administration representatives insist that businessmen must observe the financial obligations specified in the contracts for the rental of billboards. Many entrepreneurs think that once they rented a billboard, they can post whatever they want there. They have a right to do so, however they should pay taxes as well. Whether it is a quote of the president or anything else for that matter, they have rented the billboards after all. I believe this has to do with the ignorance of law and legal regulations. They simply didn't take all this into account. From the perspective of a government agency, I believe that everyone, including entrepreneurs, must comply with the legislation of Kazakhstan. Failing to solve the problem by negotiations, outraged businessmen decided to sue the city administration of Taldykorgan. Entrepreneurs insist that words of the national leader Nursultan Nazarbayev cannot be considered goods and services, but actual national wealth.
На самом деле желания у всех одинаковые. Мы хотим, чтобы
I believe we all talk about the same thing. We don't want the city administration to recognize the quotes of the president and his images as some sort of advertisement. We want this to be seen as a guideline for people on how to live and behave in civil society. Billboards as a way to get through to officials. This is how local businessmen chose to defend their rights. This simple public relations tool has put many people into the spotlight, including the head of Architecture and Construction Control Agency and the leadership of Transport Inspectorate. Apparently, this is why the scandals related to billboards and advertisement became so frequent in the area. Yet entrepreneurs do not understand why propaganda of ideas and words of the national leader should be equated to regular goods and services. The court hearing on the case against local administration will be held next week.
The number of viewers of the first national satellite channel is increasing day by day. This was reported on Tuesday in Astana at the Industrial Forum by the Minister of Transport and Communications, Askar Jumagaliyev, to the President. The idea of setting up Otau TV, the satellite broadcasting channel, the package of which includes exclusively Kazakh TV channels, was started to be realized by the Minister Zhumagaliyev while he was working as Minister of Communications and Information.
The number of satellite users has reached 150,000, a figure that is growing daily. The brand of Otau TV is becoming very well known. The idea of the domestic satellite coverage was not born spontaneously. During one of the Senate meetings, MPs were outraged by the informational policy of a little-known K+ channel, which allegedly shows Kazakhstan only in a negative light. Back then, Askar Zhumagaliyev reassured the senators by reporting that government was already working on the domestic satellite broadcasting project. No sooner said than done, and less than a year later, the government was able not only develop, adopt and fund the project, but even had the time to implement it. Interestingly, the installation of satellite dishes was initiated primarily in the rebellious Zhanaozen, where, according to Adilsos Foundation, most of the local population had free access to K+. According to town residents, the installation of alternative dishes was initiated very aggressively and was done almost forcibly. Thus, with such spirit and speed, it was not surprising to hear the statistics of Otau TV's quickly spreading coverage, reported by Minister Zhumagaliyev. At the same time, comments online indicate the forced state service is not really cheap.
State contracts kill Kazakh journalism. This idea was voiced on Tuesday during a roundtable discussing the problems of state financing of informational policies within mass media. According to the organizers of the roundtable, this year the volumes of allocated state funds have reached a record level in the last years, $152 million. 90% of this money was divided by two state channels, Kazakhstan and Khabar, as well as television and radio corporation Mir. The rest was left for newspapers, websites and regional mass media.
We're not talking about the development of technological bases or training journalists. It is not a kind of long-term perspective. It is rather a coverage of the government program, in particular how well our ministers as well as our government is performing. In fact, it is merely advertising of our government, or in other words, a government PR campaign. The state procurement system also triggered a lot of questions among media rights defenders, as it's considered to be non-transparent, while competitive tenders are often held behind closed doors. According to a survey, the majority of regional and city publications are more or less supported by government funds. At the same time, officials impose disproportionate liabilities on journalists. Civil servants believe that reporters have to inform the public only about positive things to satisfy state orders, and any criticism is perceived as a failure to comply with the contract. In their turn, media representatives offered a number of proposals. They believe that the government should finance the entire media industry rather than selected publications. The present member of the Information Ministry seemed a little confused by the criticism, but promised to take the comments into account. Every year, up to 130 media outlets are involved in state procurement. In spite of all issues raised here, we can say that media is interested in the state orders and is eager to participate in it.
The editors-in-chief were awarded with Gennady Tolmachев Prize, who was a well-known Soviet journalist, writer and biographer in Almaty on Tuesday, while independent reporters of website zhanaozen.net were reprimanded for active expressing of their civic stand. More details in the next report.
A diploma confirming that Valentina Shmelyova, the chief editor of the city newspaper Balkhashsky Rabochi, is a winner of the Gennady Tolmachev Award. Diplomas and prizes of $5,000 were awarded in Almaty on Tuesday. A press conference was held to announce the result of the 5th national competition bearing the name of the renowned Soviet journalist Gennady Tolmachev. The best chief editors, according to the organizers, are Valentina Shmelyova and Shamsheddin Pateyev of Turkestan newspaper. Next year, journalists will be participating in the competition as well. Perhaps in order to stimulate the professionals, the chair of the jury, poet Olzhas Suleymanov, noted that journalism in Kazakhstan does not have the same power as it used to. Officials are not afraid of publications, and the public often does not trust them. Today's journalism has become more open and brave, but even with this unlimited bravery, the depth is often lost.
Reporters support the heroes of their publication with both words and deeds. The staff of the website janauzian.net closely follows the fates of the arrested stage director Balat Atabayev and journalist Janbolat Mamai. It has been 5 days since the website editor Inga Yamambay and reporter Anara Bildayeva were thrown into jail because on June 15th they demanded to free the civic activists from the National Security Committee detention center. The Almaty Administrative Court sentenced them to a 10-day arrest. On Tuesday, their colleague Diaz Bisimbektiyev was summoned to court on the same charges. The court was more forgiving this time, issuing only a warning. However, this did not prevent the reporter to point out that the judge and prosecutor, in his opinion, did not even prepare properly for the proceeding. This trial was conducted with serious violations. This is already a custom for us. I believe that if our authorities will not change, this will continue to happen. It's a disgrace that there are specialists like this in law enforcement and judicial bodies, because they are supposed to protect us. But today they are working against us, against the people. Life and reality prompt media representatives not only to inform the public, but also to actively express their positions, journalist Lukman Akhmedyarov explains. The reporter has truly earned his right to believe and act the way he does. This spring, the Uralskaya Nedelya correspondent nearly died following a brutal assault, leaving him with 8 knife and traumatic gun wounds. Lukman and his colleagues are confident that critical articles and civic actions provoked the violent attack. As Kazakhstan's experience shows, reporters who come to protest actions enjoy more credibility and trust. Ironic, isn't it? Earlier, I was against journalists' participation in political processes, as they needed to preserve their objectivity. But in Kazakhstan, a journalist cannot be just an impartial observer, because laws and their implementation have led to a situation where reporters stay aside and only cover events. Not long ago, another prize, Altyn Zhuldiz, was awarded in Almaty. Academy President Sagambai Kozabayev, a contemporary journalist of Gennady Tolmachev, was praising achievements of professionals. He, however, preferred not to touch upon the topic so important for many of his colleagues. Why don't 80% of our fellow reporters cover the events in Janauzian or Aktau trials? I can't answer such questions.
The source of the Respublika newspaper, Aman Shabdarbayev, again wrote a letter to the publication proposing to raise an alarm. According to his information, after the verdict over the incitement of social hatred, organized criminal group and violent overthrow of constitutional regime, the authorities will start the persecution of independent media, including Respublika and Vzglyad newspapers, along with kplustv channel. The source asks journalists to be vigilant, claiming that special forces have received additional financing and now they can hack the passwords to Skype and email accounts.
After the trial of Vladimir Kozlov and others, you will be shut down along with newspaper Vzglyad and kplustv channel. The reason will be that you are an extremist media pool and a part of organized criminal group Ablazov Kitibayev Kozlov. Thus you will be shut down once the verdict officiating the criminal group will be announced.
Today, the attorney of Balat Atabayev, Gulnur Jandosova, urgently arrived in Aktau upon the request of the investigator Talgat Talikbayev, who is investigating the criminal case of Balat Atabayev and Janbolat Mamai. The defender must participate during investigative actions, but for unknown reason, the lawyer was not permitted to meet with his client. On Tuesday evening, investigators arrived to the pretrial detention center, and only then Gulnur Jandosova received an opportunity to enter the building.
On Tuesday, Mamai Bekhujiv, the father and public defender of Janbolat Mamai, was once again denied visit with his son. The 70-year-old man spent the whole day outside the gates of the detention facility. Investigator Tolukbayev refused to talk to Bekhujiv when he saw him after the interrogation, instead immediately going into his car. The interrogation of Balat Atabayev and Janbolat Mamai lasted for nearly 4 hours. According to Gulnar Jandosova, public activists were questioned in relation to Articles 164 and 170 of the Criminal Code. Meanwhile, it appears Yermek Tursunov, the acclaimed director of the film Kelin, is currently in Aktau, and he even managed to visit the detention facility several times, whereas neither Mamai's lawyer nor his father were able to do so. Over the phone, Tursunov said he could not talk on the matter at the moment and asked to give him a call later. It's the same old story. What else could they possibly interrogate them for? They just do their job, and we've answered all their questions already. How does Balat feel himself? He's well and he's in a good mood. That's all I can say for now.
Human Rights Watch demands from the government of Kazakhstan to justify the charges against opposition politicians and oil workers. American human rights activists claimed that the veil of secrecy over the investigation arose suspicions of political motives.
Far too many allegations of ill treatment and torture by detainees have gone uninvestigated in recent months. The impunity for ill treatment and torture needs to stop. The authorities can start with a thorough and impartial investigation into Atabayev's allegations of ill treatment and then hold everyone responsible accountable.
Protest actions in support of the arrested activist Janbolat Mamay and stage director Bolat Atabayev continue. On Tuesday in Almaty, civic activists brought a letter to the German consulate. Its author hoped to gain international support and secure the release of those suspected of inciting social hatred.
We are asking you, the leader of a superpower that supports the foundations of democracy and human rights, to call upon Kazakhstan's President Nazarbayev to immediately and unconditionally release Bolat Atabayev and Janbolat Mamay. Despite civic activists' expectations, the German consulate rejected the letter, although Bakhajan Torigozhina claims she already had the written consent of the acting consul the day before. However, in the morning, the diplomats informed the activist about cancelling the meeting. The consulate preferred not to make the event public. Nevertheless, Torigozhina said the letter will still reach the addressed. In the nearest future, the appeal will be posted on the blog of the German Chancellor Angela Merkel.
A protest action in support of stage director Bolat Atabayev was also held at the doors of the Kazakh embassy in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan.
Blogger Alexander Palyony was the only participant and organizer of the protest in front of the Kazakhstan embassy in Bishkek. In Kazakhstan, the activist became famous after a series of YouTube videos involving traffic police officers. As a result of his struggle for rights, Palyony was denied the right to enter Kazakhstan. On Tuesday, the activist prepared for the picket, bringing along a portrait of the arrested stage director with a sign, "Stop prosecution against Atabayev." Quickly arrived police and embassy security prevented Palyony to spray paint the pavement in front of the building. This was already the second similar protest, with the first one taking place on the day of Atabayev's arrest on June 15th.
A car accident in South Kazakhstan kills 11 with another 8 injured.
A heavy-duty truck collided head-on with a Ford Transit minibus carrying 17 passengers on the Shymkent-Badam highway on July 2nd at approximately 10 a.m. The initial findings indicate the minibus crossed onto the oncoming lane. 10 people died at the scene, including 3 children, with another passenger later reported dead in the hospital, where the remaining 8 people were brought after the accident. The transportation company owning the minibus and its intended destination is unknown at the moment. Going by the reported residents of the victims, they were on the way to Shardara town. The 6 passengers who survived the collision are receiving medical aid, as well as the driver of the Ford Transit, 46-year-old Shardara region native, and the 24-year-old driver of the heavy-duty truck. A criminal case has been filed regarding the accident, classified as violation of vehicles maintenance rules. The investigation is currently underway, with charges brought against the driver of the Ford Transit.
A village showdown has ended in tragedy. Regional DIA press service reported on Tuesday that a young man was shot and killed on Sunday night in Makat village. According to police, 2 more were taken to the hospital.
An investigation group has been set up, with the police arresting suspected 23-year-old resident of Maksat village, previously convicted for robbery. A criminal case was initiated on the matter. We've detained a suspect, 23-year-old resident of the regional center. A criminal case on the murder charges has been filed. The investigation is currently underway.
Employees of Almaty's second central heating plant demand a repayment of their wages. 11 workers have been living without a salary for 2 months. Most of them have already resigned from the company.
The foreman withheld his subordinates' salaries. In May this year, he showed up drunk at the heating plant and asked for money, supposedly for his daughter's funeral. Later, it was revealed that Yertai Rakhimzhanov used the workers' money for his personal needs and then fled the city. They told us twice that we either need to get our money from the foreman or bring him here. But how are we supposed to find him? Unpaid employees came to Almaty from Shymkent. Due to unemployment, many are forced to survive with odd jobs. The construction workers do not know where to go anymore, since in a few days they won't even have a place to sleep. The management of the construction company may evict the laid-off workers from their trailers. At the same time, the enterprise appears to be ready to enter talks. The company's director, Marat Kakimov, has more than 25 years of work experience in the construction business. According to him, the labor disputes on the construction site are a usual thing. Kakimov promised to pay the workers' salary, but only if they find the dishonest foreman. I told you about the procedure in such cases. Sometimes we encounter slickers like these working as foremen at construction sites who deceive other workers and take their money. Such incidents happen, but I can deal with it. The workers will receive their promised salaries, but I have to make sure that they didn't get a penny from the foreman.
A new book by sociologist and distinguished Russian scholar Oleg Karpukhin was presented in Almaty on Tuesday. Titled Unknown Raevsky, the work is about the writer who had once written about the great Alexander Pushkin.
Previously unknown Pushkin scholar Nikolai Raevsky was persecuted by Soviet authorities just before the World War II. Having left Almaty, he had to find refuge in Prague. At the age of 90 before his death, Raevsky's only dream was to collect all the works in Czech libraries, recalls Oleg Karpukhin. On Tuesday, the literature experts were presented with Pushkin scholars' books from the Prague archives. Raevsky wrote about Pushkin, and now Oleg Karpukhin writes about Nikolai Raevsky. I'm a writer myself, and I frequently wonder how many great poets and writers are forgotten these days. We need to write books about them and remember them. The youth needs to know about these people, otherwise they will be forgotten.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.